welcome to Blue Blur, a Sonic Theory series that still refers to these people as Mobians more than anything Sega has yet to come up with. Before we begin, I must ask you, what is the Sonic Canon? Now, I've already done a few theories on this from multiple timelines to more recently, establishing a coherent timeline of classic games. Quick sidebar, Tails' adventure does not take place before Sonic 2 8-bit, and more accurately takes place after the events of Sonic 3 or Triple Trouble. It just makes more sense for Tails to confidently defend an island after meeting Sonic and saving the world more than before, where he was timid and bullied for his twin tails. Okay? Okay. Now, this isn't going to be another theory trying to establish a timeline of events, mostly, but to ask whether a canon actually exists in the franchise and whether or not it's actually necessary. For the longest time, I just assumed that every game followed on from the next. Ever since Sonic Adventure referencing Sonic CD, and then Adventure 2 referencing Tails' victory in Station Square, the callbacks make it seem like there was a timeline of sorts. But then we have games like Sonic Advance and the Storybook series, which seem to just go about anywhere where Sonic had downtime. Well, there is the possibility that Black Knight took place after Sonic Unleashed because he promised Amy a date and got swept up in the tale of King Arthur, and you know the rest. Even the latest game, Sonic Frontiers, brings up almost every game from Dark Gaia to Infinite, which by extension means Sonic Generations happened. Are all these references to past games just meaningless fan service to fans who grew up with the series since the beginning? Or is there an actual canon, a timeline of events that transpired throughout the series? Take for example the aforementioned Sonic Advance and pretend we haven't played a Sonic game since Sonic 3D. And to expand on that what if, check out this video here. Though Sonic Advance has a story, it's treated more like a framework similar to that of the classic games. It exists, but it's not really important. You're just one of 4 heroes doing their best to stop Eggman. Sonic Advance 2 had more story via static cutscenes, but again, wasn't much in terms of telling a story. Advance 3 has just as much story with all the characters from the last 2 games, but now we have a new adversary called Gemerald. Who is Gemerald? Well, he's a reverse-engineered robot based on a robot called Emerald from Sonic Battle. And what's Sonic Battle? It's a beat-em-up game featuring characters such as Emerald, Shadow, and Rouge, and has an in-depth story about Emerald's connection to the Space Colony arc, which was featured in Sonic Adventure 2 along with Shadow and Rouge. And do you see where I'm going with this? As much as some would want there to not be a timeline or a canonicity to the games, there is one. Yes, you can theoretically start at any point in the series and take the game as is. But some games are going to raise questions as to who, what, and why. Don't get me wrong, it's not a bad thing. Fans like me love continuity and timelines, but there comes a point if it really is necessary for the franchise. Is connecting each and every game together in a linear progression of characters, locations, and occasional throwbacks and retcons beneficial to each new entry? No, but that's not a bad thing. Even with the smallest of comebacks, canonicity doesn't hurt the overall narrative of the game. Except for Sonic Forces, where it expects you to have already played Sonic Mania, as well as know who and where Zavok and Chaos came from. It's like seeing Pauline in Super Mario Odyssey. Younger audiences won't know the importance of these nuggets of fan service, but the older generations do and will smile about it. Sonic just has a bit more of a heavy hand when it comes to these things. It's safe to say that the games do in fact have a canon for the most part. But besides a few entries that rely on past introductions and lore, looking at you, Shadow the Hedgehog, you can still completely enjoy any game at any time in the past 33 years of Sonic. The same can't be said for other Sonic media. The IDW comics and Netflix's Sonic Prime bring in a ton of questions as to where they take place as well as if they take place at all. For IDW, from the get-go it immediately takes place after Sonic Forces, with the world rebuilding itself after Eggman's takeover. So straight away, it's confirmed canon. But after a slow build-up of familiar faces, new heroes and villains, the canonicity of the comics seemed to go awry. With stories such as the Metal Virus and Imposter Syndrome, you'd think they would make their way to the games, but no. Except for a single name drop that's hard to come by in Sonic Frontiers.
I bet Tangle would love climbing around these ruins.
The comics seem to have their own timeline going on, with it still being considered canon despite how many references to more recent games and character cameos appear. The conductor and his wife, who are currently called Basil and Flora until further notice, appear in the comics after the release of the murder of Sonic the Hedgehog, which takes place after Sonic Frontiers. but the comics are still time-locked between Forces and Frontiers, so their appearance, as well as Barry's, makes no sense unless they're building up to Frontiers or is a completely different timeline. Then there's Sonic Prime, a serious yet comedic series that has a serialized story spanning 3 seasons. The quality of writing is subjective, but spoiler warning, after the Shatterverse is fixed, everything goes back to normal and ends on a cliffhanger. But Sonic has obviously changed in terms of character, being more team-focused than before, which was never really an issue for the most part. In Sonic Forces, they literally saved the world thanks to teamwork, and in Team Sonic Racing, teamwork was the main gimmick. Its cliffhanger ending is dubious with its involvement with the games, as well as the fact that it can and can't be placed anywhere in the more recent games because of Rouge being part of Team Sonic. Her being with the crew just makes tying the show to the games that much harder. Years ago, it was so much simpler. The games are its own thing, the cartoons are its own thing, even if Sonic X rewrites Chris into the adventure games and ruins Emerald's story, and the comics are its own bag of trash of misfit stories, new characters, and reboots. At the end of the day, I don't think a canon or timeline is a bad thing for Sonic. Does it need it? Not really. But I and many others love continuity. Even at the very beginning, Sonic has had a through line of events, even if it plays out like a weekly cartoon with a new giant robot or powerful deity every week. Not every entry is necessary to play in order to understand the newest one. Even if it expects you to. The Jack games come to mind. You don't need to play Ocarina of Time to understand Wind Waker, but it does help with building that game's world. As for now, with Sonic Frontiers focused on story and character building, I look forward to the new chapter of Sonic, whether or not it's a continuation. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to like this video if you did and subscribe for future videos. And if you really want to support the channel, you can by leaving a super thanks or becoming a YouTube member. Thanks again everyone, and as always, I shall see you all next time.